Everyone told you the defense system was impenetrable, then came last night. In a single pre-dawn offensive spanning less than 6 hours, more than 1,000 projectiles, rockets, guided missiles, and suicide drones crossed into Israeli airspace. This was the most strategically coordinated non-state military operation the modern era has ever witnessed. Not a warning, not a show of force, a full-scale operational commitment, years in development, carried out with a level of precision that mathematically overwhelmed Israel's most advanced layered air defense network. The world that existed before this moment is gone. If you want the kind of analysis that cuts through the noise and delivers what headlines deliberately bury, subscribe now and hit the bell. This channel is where the real picture gets constructed, so what actually unfolded? Around 3 o'clock in the morning, Israeli radar operators encountered something no simulation had genuinely prepared them for. Not one incoming wave, not two but three distinct and sequenced assault layers. The opening wave consisted of older, low-cost Grad and Katyusha rockets. Their purpose was never destruction. Their purpose was depletion. Every interceptor battery activated. Every radar array came online. Every command center was buried under simultaneous tracking demands. The finite supply of interceptor missiles began draining. In real time, exactly as the attacking forces planners had engineered. While those batteries were cycling through reloads, the second wave was already in the air. Medium-range rockets carrying heavier warheads moved against population corridors spanning Haifa, the greater Tel Aviv region, and northern coastal cities. The targeting was not random. Specific aim points had been selected through months of intelligence preparation, the kind of methodical targeting that requires detailed maps, precise coordinates, and deep institutional memory. This is not the signature of an improvised force. Then came the third wave, and it is here that the characterization of Hezbollah as merely a terrorist organization armed with crude rockets collapsed beyond any recovery. Precision-guided ballistic missiles equipped with Iranian navigation systems and terminal seeker technology struck military airfields, radar stations, port infrastructure, and power generation facilities with circular error probables measured in meters, not hundreds of meters. Threading between them were loitering munitions, low-flying, slow-moving suicide drones designed not to chase what Iron Dome was actively defending, but to find the geometric gaps that any finite defense network must inevitably leave open. The combined effect was not coincidence. It was systems engineering applied to the art of war. Northern interceptor batteries reached magazine exhaustion during the reload interval, minutes long, but operationally decisive. Their coverage zones went dark. David's sling was simultaneously processing a separate queue of longer-range ballistic threats. Arrow was engaged at the uppermost defensive tier, every layer of the most sophisticated missile defense architecture outside the United States was performing exactly as designed, and it still wasn't enough. Rockets reached the ground. Fires burned in Haifa. Simultaneous impacts registered across multiple cities. Satellite imagery confirmed what no official statement has fully acknowledged. This was not marginal penetration. The ceiling on what non-state actors can achieve no longer exists. Here is what breaking news coverage will never give you the time to understand, and what you absolutely must grasp to make sense of everything that follows. Last night did not begin last night. It was decided in 2006. Following the Lebanon War, Iranian strategic planners conducted a systematic after-action review of Hezbollah's military performance. 4,000 rockets fired across 34 days. Israel absorbed the campaign and emerged functionally intact. The conclusion reached in Tehran was precise and unambiguous: volume without accuracy generates noise, not strategic consequence. The next campaign would demand something categorically different. What followed was the most significant asymmetric military investment program of the past 2 decades, executed under international sanctions, conducted beneath continuous surveillance, and carried out in the face of hundreds of Israeli interdiction strikes against weapons shipments moving through Syrian territory and against consistent Western dismissal of its ultimate scale. Iran's response to that interdiction campaign was the decision that changed everything. Rather than shipping complete weapon systems transfers that could be tracked, intercepted, and eliminated in transit, Iran transferred manufacturing capability itself, precision guidance components, production technology, technical expertise embedded directly inside Lebanese territory, dispersed, concealed, independent of the vulnerable supply lines that Israeli air power could target and destroy. The result was a near-indigenous weapons production capacity already established inside Lebanon before any strike could reach it. The Fatih 110 missile family and its successive variants became the precision backbone of what was unleashed last night. These are genuine ballistic missiles carrying Iranian-derived guidance systems, capable of striking a specific structure with a reliability that fundamentally reframes every prior assumption about what Hezbollah can inflict upon Israeli infrastructure. Alongside the missile program, Iran constructed a drone force refined across multiple active combat theaters: Yemen, Iraq, and Syria, where Iranian-designed platforms were tested against real defensive countermeasures in real engagements, generating real performance data with every operation. By last night, these systems were not experimental prototypes, they were operationally mature weapons. Beneath all of it, literally beneath it's one of the most expansive underground military infrastructure networks ever built by a non-state actor. Launch positions, weapons storage facilities, command nodes, logistics hubs, hardened, dispersed, and constructed specifically to survive the kind of sustained Israeli air campaign that has been operating for years. And through all of it, the assassinations of senior Iranian commanders, the cyber attacks against nuclear facilities, the currency destabilization efforts, for decades of comprehensive economic warfare, the institutional framework did not fracture. It adapted, it indigenized, and it ultimately produced the operational capability that was activated last night. What was unleashed was not simply a weapons arsenal, it was an organization. Now consider the position Washington found itself in during the hours that followed. The image that will define this moment politically was not the fires burning over Haifa. It was the silence emanating from Washington, an administration that had publicly anchored its regional credibility to restore deterrence, that had issued specific, confident warnings about consequences for Iranian miscalculation, watched in real time as those warnings were operationally disregarded at a scale that no diplomatic framing can repackage. The Hormuz calculation sits at the center of every American contingency scenario involving Iranian escalation. Iran has spent decades constructing a maritime area denial architecture specifically engineered to threaten oil transit through the Persian Gulf's critical choke point: anti-ship ballistic missiles, cruise missile batteries. Along the Iranian coastline, submarine forces, fast attack swarms, naval mine capabilities. A serious American military strike on Iran that provoked a genuine Hormuz response would transmit an energy price shock through the global economy within days, with immediate and measurable consequences at the consumer level, the financial market level, and the domestic approval level for any administration whose political identity is bound to economic performance. This is not speculation, it is arithmetic, and Tehran ran that arithmetic before authorizing last night's operation. In Moscow, the silence is entirely comfortable. In Beijing, the calculation extends further into the future, and across the majority of the world's nations shaped by histories of colonialism and enduring struggles for genuine sovereignty, a different kind of lesson is being absorbed. The demonstration that a heavily sanctioned, repeatedly attacked, non-Western actor can develop and deploy military capability that imposes real costs on the most sophisticated Western-backed military in the region carries a resonance that the Western strategic establishment consistently and dangerously underestimates. Strip away the weapons inventories and the geopolitical maneuvering. What remains is a single question that no missile system can answer: who can absorb more? Iran has endured comprehensive economic warfare for over 4 decades. Medicine import restrictions, currency destabilization campaigns, scientific personnel assassinated, nuclear facilities sabotaged, military commanders eliminated, and through every one of those pressures, the institutional framework has not collapsed. It has adapted, indigenized, and ultimately produced the operational capability that was demonstrated last night. That endurance is not manufactured by external actors. It emerges from a genuine national conviction internally contested in its political expressions, as all authentic nationalisms are, that strategic sovereignty is worth defending regardless of the cost its preservation demands. Israel's security model operates on an entirely different premise. The social contract that sustains it rests on a specific promise that the state's military capability will protect civilian life sufficiently to justify the enormous costs, economic, demographic, and psychological, that maintaining it requires, when 1,000 projectiles Penetrate the defensive architecture in a single night, when families across Tel Aviv spend hours inside shelters while impacts register in their neighborhoods, when the sense of psychological safety that the defense network was specifically engineered to provide dissolves under operational pressure, that foundational contract comes under stress that no press conference can repair. The question now being asked inside Israeli homes and Israeli institutions is the current trajectory sustainable is not a military question, it is a political one, and Hezbollah's operational planners understand this precisely. They are not attempting to defeat Israel in any conventional military sense. They are attempting to make Israeli security policy sufficiently expensive in resources, in international standing, in domestic cohesion, in the psychological well-being of the civilian population that the political system is eventually compelled to seek terms. It is a strategy with substantial historical precedent. It carries no guarantee of success, but it is being executed with accelerating sophistication and demonstrably increasing operational effect. Now consider what the fires, when they eventually subside, will reveal about the broader landscape. The American regional order across the Middle East was constructed on three foundational pillars: the uncontested military dominance of American and American-equipped forces in direct confrontation, the integration of regional energy flows into a dollar-denominated system that granted Washington structural leverage over producers and consumers simultaneously, and the network of bilateral relationships and security guarantees that translated American power into tangible political outcomes on the ground. All three pillars are under simultaneous pressure. Last night accelerated that pressure toward a threshold that serious analysts are increasingly describing with a word Washington has deliberately resisted: irreversibility. The 1,000 projectiles launched over Israeli territory by a force that Iran built, funded, trained, and ultimately activated were not solely a military event. They were a proof of concept transmitted live in real time to every government, every military establishment, and every non-state actor across the global system that has been watching and quietly questioning whether the American-led order is as durable as its architects have consistently insisted. The answer transmitted last night was not reassuring. What decades of deterrence architecture were specifically designed to prevent has now occurred in front of every audience simultaneously, and the lesson being absorbed extends far beyond rockets and interceptors. It concerns strategic patience, asymmetric investment, the gap between technological superiority and the depth of institutional purpose that sustains a force through decades of pressure, assassination, and economic warfare without fracturing. That lesson does not expire when the ceasefire arrives. The fundamental question demanding an answer is this: can deterrence be meaningfully reconstructed on these foundations, or has this activation crossed a threshold from which there is no return? Drop your analysis in the comments. Not a reaction, a genuine assessment. What do 1,000 projectiles over Israeli territory mean for the next 5 years of this conflict? What do they signal for American credibility across the region? What conclusions is every outside actor drawing right now? The conversation beneath this video carries real weight. Build it seriously. If this breakdown delivered the strategic clarity that mainstream coverage continues to withhold, share it with one person who needs to see it. Hit like. And if this channel is where you come for analysis that treats you as someone fully capable of engaging with strategic reality, subscribe, because the next phase of this conflict is already developing, and we will be here when it arrives. Stay sharp, stay informed.